It's your weekly dose of feeling good. 2NURFM's Health Naturally with Denis Stewart for our sponsor, New Lambton Herbal Medicine Centre.
And Marie has rung that number from Mayfield. And a question about curcumin, which Denis mentioned earlier, Marie.
Yes, my GP put me on curcumin.
Yes.
And in 3 months, I've gone off all medication for pain.
That's good, isn't it?
It's incredible because I was on endone.
Yes.
And I had nothing else
you were on endone.
Yes.
And you're free of endone as a result
I'm free of everything. Even Panadol, everything.
That's a good result, isn't it? And full credit to your GP. Full credit to your GP, because you're not going to believe this, Marie, when I say that I still have patients that will come and see me, and when I mention curcumin to them, they will make a comment like, "Oh, my GP says there's nothing in that it's not proven and it's not scientific." That disappoints me. But the other side about it is, fortunately, there are more GPs acknowledging that there is something in complementary medicine, that there is something in what I say, and that curcumin is indisputably something. Well, you've demonstrated if you can get off endone, which is, well, listeners might not know what we're talking about, that is a really powerful agent for relieving pain. If you can get off endone under the direction of your GP and he's monitoring you and prescribing you curcumin, that is an incredible testimony, and that has made my day.
Yes, well, I can't believe how free of pain. I have arthritis throughout the system.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Even in my toes.
Isn't that great?
It's incredible.
Well, I'm so pleased for you, Marie. I'm so pleased for you.
Thank you.
And I'm so pleased that your doctor is using sensible complementary medicine. He must be reading well and must be right up there.
Yes.
Isn't that great? That's
beautiful.
made my day. You know, years ago when I started lecturing, and I'm virtually at the end of my career now, but 40 years ago when I started lecturing, I said there would be a day when what I was teaching and saying would be embraced by the mainstream. And your conversation this morning confirms the fact that my prophecy 40 years ago is probably now coming true.
Yes, well, quite a few people have said, and I've also suggested they go on it with their doctor's permission.
Yes.
Because I've even dropped my blood pressure tablet.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't
Gosh, Marie,
surprise me.
that's fantastic, isn't it?
Good?
Result.
Well, what a great GP too. What a great GP.
You're pleased, aren't you? That
I
these
am.
things which are available.
I am, and look,
very
a
sensible.
lot of people think that because I'm involved in complementary medicine, or what some call alternative medicine, I don't call it that I've got some sort of vendetta against the medical profession. That's nonsense. I've been a great supporter of the medical profession, and I've taught many of them over the years this system of medicine, and it's great. It's really made my day to hear that comment, and I commend GPs in this town that are starting to look at some of the alternatives, if you call them that, or complementary medicines, to see how they can augment their patients' health. That's great.
Hello, who have we got here? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, can you tell me your name, please?
Margaret.
Margaret, okay. Now, what would you like to ask Denis about?
Denis, my mum has quite bad osteoarthritis.
Yes.
She takes glucosamine and chondroitin.
Yes.
I was just wondering if the curcumin would be a better option.
Okay, I'll explain it to you in this way. Osteoarthritis is, well, I would refer to it as a wear and tear condition. Whilst it is painful, it's not always characterised with the same degree of painful inflammation that rheumatoid arthritis is. But having said that, your mother is doing the right thing by using glucosamine and chondroitin, albeit what I will be suggesting is, or what I would be happy to do, is send you free of charge a container of my glucosaplex. I have a product called Glucosaplex, which incorporates glucosamine and chondroitin, but also has a number of other agents in it, which I believe puts it right up there as one of the top products for addressing osteoarthritis. So before you go off the program, make sure you give your name and address to the receptionist so that we can send you, free of charge, a container of my Glucosaplex to see how your mum goes on that. But secondarily, in response to your question, yes, I think it would be valuable for mum to add to her management some curcumin, because curcumin is more to do with the symptom of inflammation rather than the degenerative process associated with osteoarthritis. Put the two together, and curcumin products aren't that expensive, by the way. Put those two together, and I think you've got a nice little combination that would give mum an additional edge. You try that.
All right, that'd be great. I appreciate your offer. Thank you very much for your help.
You make sure you give them your name and address.
Yes,
I will do.
Stay on the line there, Margaret. And on 2NURFM, this is Health Naturally, and we're taking your calls 49216216. We've just lost Peter for the moment, but I hope you'll ring back, Peter, in just a moment. Well, this might be a good time, Denis, to mention the Mediterranean diet yet again. I say that because you have spoken about it previously.
We have indeed.
But would you just refresh our memories on what the Mediterranean diet involves?
The Mediterranean diet is a diet that's predominantly eaten by countries, or eaten by people in countries that are on the fringe of the Mediterranean, countries such as Italy, Spain, Portugal, and they have a particular diet which differs from the Anglo-Celtic diet. Their diet is structured essentially round an emphasis on fish, an emphasis on what we might call legumes, things like a lot of various beans, a lot of emphasis on lean meat, but not a lot of red meat, a very, very small emphasis on meat, an incredible amount of emphasis on fish, particularly fish like sardine and salmon, the oily fish. A lot of emphasis also on certain fruits and vegetables, for instance, tomatoes, an eggplant, and various peppers. These are the sorts of foods that predominate in that culture. There is a great deficiency. By that I mean there is not much sugar or refined carbohydrate in the Mediterranean diet, whereas in the Anglo diet, unfortunately, I would argue that it over the years has developed into predominantly a carbohydrate emphasis diet with too much sugar in it, and has become deficient in those characteristic foods that characterise the Mediterranean diet: fish, fresh fruit and vegetables, no sugar, or when we say no sugar, virtually no sugar, an emphasis on red wine rather than beer.
Now, it's starting to sound interesting.
It is indeed, and people can understand why I live in the Hunter Valley. But look, there's a lot more about the Mediterranean diet than that. But interestingly, when people go onto the Mediterranean diet, many of them will notice a number of things happen. One of the things that will tend to happen is they'll begin to lose weight progressively. And that can have a big bearing on type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetic conditions. Type 2 diabetes, which is of an epidemic proportion, and pre-diabetic conditions, tend to have weight and obesity behind them. Not always. The Mediterranean diet and its emphasis will tend to assist in weight loss, and that in itself is a huge factor in lessening the drift towards medication. So there is definitely a correlation. The other thing about the Mediterranean diet, which you and I discussed briefly before we came in, is that the Mediterranean diet is something that emphasises lunch and de-emphasises breakfast. Now, I'm not going to be too provocative when I say this. I promise I wouldn't. But one of the books that's recently been written, again, by a medical professional who went on to study clinical biochemistry in England to do his PhD, a book by Dr. Terence Kealey, Kealey. I'll put it up so the camera might get it. That book, entitled Breakfast is a Dangerous Meal, is an eye-opener. And what it tends to do, or what my interpretation of that book, would see it as supporting the Mediterranean habit or tradition of not having a big breakfast, virtually starting the day with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, more likely to be coffee, maybe even red wine, but at lunchtime making sure you have a decent lunch, a milder dinner at night. That, in conjunction with the intention of doing something for type 2, makes the Mediterranean diet so useful as a tool that costs people nothing, just a change in their eating habits, Get off the carbs, not that you can entirely, de-emphasise them. Don't have a carbohydrate breakfast. That's my opinion. See sugar as potentially a poison. I say that tongue-in-cheek. See it as potentially a poison. Start and move in the direction. More fish, more beans, more fresh fruit and vegetables, more eggplants, more peppers, more tomatoes, red wine instead of a six-pack.
The Mediterranean diet. Well, you mentioned there, the camera can see it, and of course, Denis, there is going to be a video of this program,
is there
often
really?
is of your programs that will be available on YouTube, as well as the podcast on our website, 2nurfm.com, and there will be a link to this video as well through the program Health Naturally. And we're speaking about food being of great help, and David has rung in from Western on 49216216, and it's all about raw ginger with you, David. Hello. Yes?
Hello, David.
Good afternoon, Dennis. Just firstly, a quick comment on your last call when you said don't eat breakfast. I always thought the adage was breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and eat like a pauper.
I knew I'd provoke a bit of interest in that. Look, you'd have to really read this book, Breakfast is a Dangerous Meal, written by Terence Kealey, who, by the way, not only being a qualified GP, went on and did his PhD in England in clinical biochemistry, and himself is a confessed type 2 diabetic sufferer who manages his condition by taking on board what he's written in this provocative work. And the reason I've mentioned it today is that it is provocative, but as I said to Jane earlier in the day, I can't put the book down, and I'm using it myself because I am type 2, managing it with diet and lifestyle. This has dramatically affected my thinking and confirmed a lot of my observations. He contradicts what you have said, the adage that you have a big breakfast and etc., etc. That is seemingly is not the wisest thing in the world for the type 2, and he gives an explanation as to why it is. Now, if you're under medical treatment, you'll be governed by what your doctor says. All I'm saying is this is a very interesting work, and I'm using the technique and have done, and I've already noticed the benefit. Breakfast is a dangerous meal, but anything you do, even if you're pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, you must, of course, be guided by your GP and be monitored by him. But I can't put the book down. It's altered my thinking.
Okay, well, my question was, does raw ginger hold any benefits?
Look, I think it does. I think, to be fair, raw ginger is likely to be more flavoursome than other forms of ginger. You can get ginger in powdered form, and that's useful. Don't get me wrong. It becomes the basis of encapsulated preparations. But raw ginger is used in cooking, in preparing meals, and it brings with it, if you like, that pungent, original freshness, which can be sometimes lost when you dehydrate the raw ginger, or in other words, dry it out preparatory to convert it to a powder. So if you've got access to raw ginger, my view is see it as preferred way of taking it, and if you can take it even as part of your diet regularly rather than just as an occasional spice to cook your food with, do that, because I could talk all day about the virtues of ginger, particularly at this time of the year, when in my literature and my studies, ginger is an ideal herb at this time of the year to be taken by people that can't handle stronger pungent herbs such as chili. Ginger is a useful alternative, and it has a peculiar affinity for the lung, so that in Asian medication or Asian traditional medicine, ginger is seen as a useful agent to bring into food, particularly in the cooler times of the year, because it seems to build up healthier lung function. It lessens the viscosity of mucus and leads to a better decongesting procedure. It warms the lung, to use traditional Chinese language. So if you can use the raw stuff, in my opinion, it's the better way to go. And this time of the year, it's come back to the point, it's a very useful agent, a spice, a food to use regularly on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll have to chase that book up. I'm also type 2 diabetic.
Yeah, well, look, it's worthwhile reading. As I say, as a type 2 person myself, I'm interested in what I can do to maintain my managed condition, to keep my sugar or my blood sugar levels stable, and to maintain what's called the HbA1c, to make sure that that is below 7 and ideally more towards 6. Your doctor would take your HbA1c probably every 6 months, and that is a good arbiter of how your management of your type 2 is going. And if you haven't discussed that with your GP, indicate your interest in it. Mention this book. Are you interested in that? But my advice to all type 2 people is to do what I do. Get a glucometer, take your readings of the morning, start to log them. And if you do any dietary experiment, like cutting down on certain foods, looking at the amount of carbs you're eating and you shouldn't eat, you'll be able to see the improvement, and your doctor will be able to pick up on it through his HbA1c assessment of you. Become interested in the condition, and this text by Terence Kealey, Breakfast is a Dangerous Meal, is not just looking at the problem that breakfast may have for type 2, but it's very informative about parameters, about readings, about expected goals, of hints here and there as to what a type 2 could do to help manage their condition. And my work for 40 years has been to try to get over to people that despite having good medical practitioners and being well monitored, at the end of the day, we have to become involved in our own health maintenance, and indeed at times even participating in our own health care. Be interested to see what you think about it, David.
And keep up the ginger eating. It sounds
Absolutely.
you're doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
Hello, Ronald.
Hello, is that Dennis, is it there?
Yes, Ron, how are you?
Good, thank you, Dennis.
Good.
Dennis, you continually throw importance on red wine.
Yes.
My question is that only certain types of red wine, or does that mean like tawny ports and all other red wines, or is it a certain wine?
What we're tending to emphasise here are not the fortified wines. We're tending to emphasise here wines like the Shiraz, the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Merlots, those wines that are taken with meals. And obviously in the Hunter Valley, we make probably some of the best Shiraz in the world. And I prefer a Shiraz. My wife drinks Merlot. But it doesn't matter which brand they are. But the red wines that I'm talking about, generally speaking, are rich in what's called resveratrol. Now, that is a particular substance known as a polyphenol. Resveratrol is considered to be the agent in red wine which has a significant health impact. There's been some studies done which tend to indicate that the regular healthy use of red wines, such as those that I've mentioned, not the fortified wines, the red wines that I've mentioned, the Shiraz, the Cabernets, the Cabernet Sauvignons, the Merlots, there's good evidence to suggest that the regular use of those, particularly as appended to our meals, has the effect of helping the health of the cardiovascular system, and interestingly, perhaps also lessening some bowel pathologies. A lot of interesting work suggesting that resveratrol may have an impact on some pathologies that affect the bowel. As well as that, it is one of those wines also that is related to the Mediterranean diet, where it's taken almost from morning till night, so to speak, and I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, and it's considered to be an important component because people that are traditional eaters of the Mediterranean diet, that is those in those countries that still live largely on that food, have a significantly longer and healthier life than what we Anglos do. So it's been put forward that the red wine is a significant companion. It's not just an adage, it is a significant component of the Mediterranean diet, and I've always proclaimed that a sensible introduction of those forms of red wine, of course preferably Hunter Valley red wines, those red wines brought into our diet, taken on a daily basis, are likely to have effects beneficially on our cardiovascular system, on the health of our bowel, and other areas, and maybe even longevity. So that would be my quick response to your question, Ron. I hope it's helped you.
It is definitely a complex question.
Yeah.
And while we're on the subject of the book, Paula's rung in from Argenton. She'd like to know where you get it, Denis.
Okay. Paula, interestingly, this is a book that I understand has only recently been published, and I saw the review of the book in a diabetic magazine that I get sent to me, and I requested my lovely, faithful receptionist, Karen, in my practice, who's been with me for nearly 30 years, and she's very good at hunting down some of the literature that I throw at her, and she got this, I suspect, from Amazon or bookstore. What I suggest is, if you like, ring Karen. I'll give you a number here of 49562321, 49562321, and that goes to any listener who might like information following on from the program, or might like to know where they can get hold of this. But I'm sure Karen can elucidate you more as to the exact place that she got it from. But she got it for me rather rapidly, and as I have said, I literally can't put it down. I literally can't put it down.
Okay. That's at Lambton, isn't it?
Yes, at New Lambton, opposite the public school.
Yeah, I just might call in.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay then.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks for ringing, Paula. And our last call for today, June's rung in from Cessnock about curcumin. Your comment or question, June?
Yes, I have a daughter who has 3 back operations, and virtually none of them now have been successful.
Oh, dear.
She lives in pain. They've told her there's nothing more they can do from her. All she's got to look forward to is a wheelchair.
Oh, dear.
And she virtually lives on pain tablets. She takes Endone, Panadine for it, plus another couple. And I heard you talking about this, and the lady rang in and said about how good it is for the pain.
Yes.
The receptionist, Morris, I wanted to know how you spelled it so as I could try and get some at the chemist.
Okay. Look, you're in Cessnock.
Yes.
What I suggest you do is go to Sally Bowen's rooms up near Goldman's. You know where Goldman's is there in Cessnock? Well, Sally's rooms are just a street up from that, in the same street essentially. Now, Sally stocks all of the things that I refer to on this program. And as Cessnock people probably know, I do a session there every second Tuesday of the month. Sally would stock the curcumin that I prescribe. That is not to say that our good pharmacists or health food stores in Cessnock don't stock it also, but for convenience and ease for you, if you were to go to Sally at Bowen's Natural Therapy Centre, you'd be able to get the one that I prescribe.
Thanks for your call, June. That was a great program of great interest. And just to finish off in our last minute, Denis, is there any one food that you think is worth mentioning?
I must mention this. I consider the food known as bitter melon, botanically known as Mamordica, to be probably one of the most important foods that a type 2 diabetic can use. Now, unfortunately, it's bitter. And unfortunately, most Australians wouldn't know it, although it's in our supermarkets, on our fruit and vegetable shelves. A patient of mine, lovely patient of mine, brought in 3 beautiful bitter melons for me the other day, and I didn't have a chance to properly thank her. Thank you. Bitter melon comes in powder form. And for those that don't like the vegetable or know how to cook it, you can get it in powder form, and you can get it from my rooms at 39 Alma Road. Denis Stewart's bitter melon powder, a must in my opinion for anyone that's pre-diabetic or fighting type 2.
Fantastic. That's Health Naturally for today. Thank you, Denis Stewart.
It's a good program, Jane. Thank you.
And we'll be back after Easter on 2NURFM for Health Naturally.